Let me go over what I'm using here today to control the weeds in the ponds and the algae. Sitting here, this is actually the dolly for that 60-gallon sprayer, particularly so I can move it around a garage I can't back that cab tractor into and be able to pick it up with that particular hitch. It's almost too tall for the 1023. Can still pick it up, but it's that this dolly is just works for that one too. So needed it to more effectively and easily get it on the larger tractor. So in the middle here is our aquatic herbicide. It's called Diquat. That particular gallon can make 100 gallons of mix at the concentrate level that's in that 1 gallon jug. It's 37% and almost 38% of the Diquat herbicide is the name of the actual chemical. There are other products out there that have brand names, and most of the time it's a quarter of the strength. You'll get a gallon that will only mix up 25 gallons of mix. Without tax, that is about a $90 gallon of $90 per gallon, and again it'll make 100 gallons of mix. Over here to our left is our algaecide, and that's a product from Applied Biochemists. It's called Cutrine or Cutrine Plus. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. There's 2.5 gallons, and I usually use a gallon to make up 25 gallons, so 2 gallons. I'm going to be making 50-gallon mixes in the tank today. So under normal circumstances, if I was spraying algae that was bloomed up more than you saw in that smaller pond, I usually use a gallon per 25 gallons of mix. Although I've been debating the last couple years, if I get started and on it, I try and get on it as soon as I can, and that's one of the reasons I do this myself instead of hiring this out. But I've flirted around to cut my cost in half of using a half a gallon for 25 gallons. But we're gonna, since we're using the herbicide, which will kill algaecide too, I've got a little more in there than to just go alone with just the herbicide today. So I'm going to add half strength the way I mix things up. So 1 gallon for the whole 50 gallons of algaecide along with the herbicide. And on the right, we've got an aquatic surfactant. It's called Sidekick 2, and it's CIDE-KICK and the Roman numeral 2 next to it. It's an oil, and it helps. That is, this right here is kind of like the magic sauce. I don't use a whole lot of it. I put in 8 ounces per 25 gallons, and I should probably be doing at least twice that much, but I've kind of squeezed it down to the least amount that I need to use, and it still seems to be effective. There is a big difference without having that in the mix. You can watch it. You probably won't be able to see it on the video, but you can see how your mix spreads across the water. And I'll talk about the sprayer a little bit later, but I've got some bigger blooms of that weed that I should be able to get enough of it, and it will move in the water, the mix with that surfactant, that I'll have a really good application. And it would be a little more difficult for as far out as I've got to get the chemical or my herbicides to do the job effectively. Below there I've got 3 pitchers. There's a quart, there's a half gallon, and a gallon, and those, depending on what I'm doing, I measure them out. I'm not real picky, but I get as close as I can. That will help you mix up your batches a little bit more effectively. Unfortunately, they're not giving those away at the farm store. I do get all of my herbicides, and one day once I get the 1023 fixed and some room in that little garage, I'll go over. I spray several different types of 2,4-Ds, a little glyphosate, but a lot of about once a month I can generally have to do a algaecide treatment, and about twice a year in the spring I get this weed, and in the fall I get a different weed that comes up right towards the end of the season, and it's a little difficult weed to control. Plus your temperature is cooling off. Water temperature is a key to start algaecide. It had a treatment back in April. The ponds did, when the water had warmed up, and then things cooled off, and that's why I don't have much algaecide coming in, and it's been, gosh, the beginning of April, so we're almost going on 2 months that I got by with no application because it cooled off in that period. But the water temperature in the springtime, you can get a winter algae, a cold water algae, and as the water temperature gets up towards about 50 degrees, that will start dying off. But if the temperature comes up even really quickly, you'll have the winter algaecide, cold water algaecide dying off as the warm weather stuff is beginning to grow, and one will sit on top of the dying cold water, one will sit on top of the new growing warm weather algaecide, and that can be a bigger mess than you actually think it is. But I've kind of controlled that. I use a little bit of a aquatic dye, helps, and I make sure I get that in the winter too. Anyways, we are going to mix some stuff up here. I'm going to talk a little bit about the sprayer, and then a video after that. We'll go behind the building here and spray that in and give you an example of how I apply it. We'll be right back for part 3.